Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I have the most amazing guest with me today. We've already had a fantastic conversation. We probably should have been recording it sooner, but buckle up because she's a lot of fun. Her name is Dana Sardano. She is a published author, co-founder of Phenom-Publishing, co-founder and chief officer of Curriculum Plus content at finduniquelyu.com. She is also the owner, resident artist, and intuitive at Ubuntu Fish Gallery in Stuart, Florida. And Dana left her 23-year-long career in education to fully embrace an artist's life. She now integrates her education, leadership skills, educational experience, and artistic ability to help others lead empowered lives. Dana, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm so happy that you're here. You have such an amazing story. So why don't you tell us how you went from being an educator in, I think it was probably traditional education, to what you're doing now, because that seems to be a really big change.
You know, when I was doing it, when I made the change, like I got it was a big deal, but it was like the only option I had. But now in retrospect, I'm like, oh my God. So just to give you a little background, I was a career educator. I in your notes, I had left a 23-year career in education, but in total, it was about 25 years. So when you think of it, it's about a quarter of a century, right? And so I taught the last 16 years of my career, I was in a private college parochial school, so I was a director of student development. So like I was, I thought I was somebody, you know what I mean? Like I lived the part, and like, my job was twofold. I worked with kids with like learning disabilities. I taught English and history, all of that. And I suspended kids. I was like the dean of students, so I was in it. Like I was a career educator. And then one day in 2015, by happenstance, I picked up a paintbrush, and I hadn't done anything really. I've done craftsy over the years, but like I hadn't touched a paintbrush since I was in like middle school or high school. Wow. And I painted a picture for my husband one night. I was tutoring, and afterwards I was like, hey, let's go to one of those painting with a twist classes. You know what I'm talking about, where the women drink wine and they paint? Yeah. Oh, and my husband was like, nah, I'm not going to go hang out with a bunch of ladies and drink wine with you. He's like, but let's go to Michael's. I'll get you anything you want. We'll paint at home. So we did that, and I painted this painting, and I had never been the same after that. And
wow.
I went home every day. I had 2 little kids at the time. Come home from work, did soul-sucking job, come home from work, feed them, put them to bed, put the sheet on the dining room table, and paint. And within 2 years, so now we're January 2015, by the summer of 2016, so a year later, I went into my principal's office the first day of school. And I was like, listen, I can no longer do this when I know I can do that. And I said, I'll give you the year. So I finished out the year till 2017, and I retired from education in that way. And then I did 2 years after that where I did a little part-time gig teaching art to little kids, so I could keep the lights on and keep my husband from, from losing his mind. But it evolved so quickly when you do. And again, I'll answer any questions you got because I can tell the story for hours. But it was one of those things that when you do what you love, it just spiraled. And here I am sitting with you right now.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. I hope I can remember them. The first one is when, prior to when you were young, when you were a little kid, did you have artistic abilities then, or did you paint just for fun, or did you really have a passion for it? The second question is, what did your husband say when you said, hey, honey, guess what I'm going to do?
Okay, so the answer is yes. When I was a kid, the first thing I ever wanted to do, I wanted to be an artist or like a veterinarian because I loved animals, and then life happens. And then, the adults, everybody's got different stories, but the adults in my life weren't as doting as I think they could have been. You know, I joke I was raised by wolves, but nobody really like took that and ran with it. So I went to school to be a teacher because it was just something I understood, because I always had teachers and I had a natural inclination. It was, you know, and so it was easy. I was like, oh, I'll be a teacher, and it was stable and you got a paycheck. So the idea of being an artist quickly diminished, you know, 7, 8, 9, you know what I mean? Like when you start thinking about other things. My husband, when I told my husband that I wanted to leave my job, now remember, I started painting and it was spiraling. I'm painting, I got paintings everywhere. I'm like Oprah, I'm giving them away. You get a painting. Like I'm like out of my mind. They're hanging. I had a big office in school. They're all over my walls. And then somebody commissioned me, and then I did some art festivals, and then that started to happen. So when I told him I wanted to leave my job, these were his exact words. If this is what you want to do, then this is what you'll do. He's like, but you have to understand. I was making 6 figures, and so was he at the time. He's like, you have to understand. We have to sell this house. We lived in a beautiful little house we just renovated. We were newly married by the beach in Fort Lauderdale, Lauderdale by the sea, if anybody's familiar with that area. He's like, we have to sell the house. We have to move to a place where we could afford, you know, one salary. He's like, you know, that Mercedes that you drive? He's like, you have to get a car that's paid for. So in an instant, I handed him the keys to the Mercedes. We put the house on the market. Within 6 months, we moved out into a rural area. He bought me like the largest shed you could buy. It was like 12 by 20. And oh my God, it had windows and a loft, and he insulated it and painted it. We created a garden around it. And I had this beautiful studio for 2 years before I then eventually graduated to the gallery. But this man, people expect the answer to be, oh my God, my husband lost his mind. He's like, if this is what you want to do, I got you back. But you have to make certain concessions to do this. And here we are.
Wow. And I love the fact that you had a she shed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was awesome. I called it the Ubuntu room because I'm the Ubuntu girl, right? So I called it the Ubuntu room. And what was cool is you see the shed. We had a pretty large yard because, again, it was in this rural area with about 1 acre. And it was really beautiful. And I gardened and did, you know, I returned to nature, right? I returned to self, that sort of thing. But when you open the doors to it, see these 2 paintings behind me, imagine the entire thing just covered with paintings. It's amazing. It was amazing. It was like when people make it, you know, like when like artists, singers, actors, whatever, when they make it and they look back at the climb, they're like, yeah, we used to live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn when we were trying to make it in the city. And I think about that studio. It was so special. My friends would come over and we'd paint together. It was really cool.
So then did you move from that house to another house?
Yes.
Okay.
So so I'm doing that for 2 years, made a bunch of connections with a bunch of intuitives and other artists. And then that eventually evolved into me opening the gallery in Stuart, which is about 30 minutes north. And then we knew that house we always knew it was temporary. Like it was like a landing pad before the next thing. So we wound up moving to a house in Stuart. This is where I'm sitting right now. I'm not in my gallery. I'm in my office at home. And yeah, so we moved to Stuart so I could be closer to the gallery.
Okay, so we know what your husband said and what his reaction was. What about your boss when you came in that first day of school, and said, you know what, I'm done?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. She was supportive because the writing was on the wall. Like you could see that I was like starting to become very disenchanted with what I was doing. My head of school, who I had some of this because I thought, you know, the children should be taught this way. And he thought that they should, you know, so it was leading to that. But his conversation with me when I told him I was leaving inspired one of my paintings. If you were to go on my website, you'd see it in the gallery. It's called Pigs Fly, Baby Pigs Fly. Because he made the point that, you know, you think you're going to make this kind of money as an artist? What are you doing? Why are you leaving this stable career? So he had his own opinions. So at first, my success or my desire for success was to prove. But then when you get to that point where you're just so happy to be where you are, that you don't need to prove anymore. But that painting exists as my proof that pigs fly.
Well, and I'm definitely going to look for that this afternoon. I'm going back to your website because I don't remember seeing that, but now that I know the story behind it. Did you mention to him, because this is a phrase that you used a few minutes ago that just kind of really resonated with me, the soul-sucking job. So was that something that you explained to him, that there's a whole lot more to life than being stuck in a soul-sucking job?
I didn't explain that to him, although it's part of my mission to explain it to anybody who will listen.
Mm-hmm.
For him, it was more there was a catalyst that led to my real disenchantment. Like I was stuck, and then I had a little self-sabotage. I mouthed off to the wrong person, and then it created
I'm so shocked.
I know. Like, who would think that an Italian chick from Jersey would mouth off to the wrong person? But I really did explain that when something awakens in you and you don't pursue that, it's really your death to self. And if you really want to honor yourself, it doesn't matter how many figures I'm making. It doesn't matter what car I'm driving. What matters is that I be in peace. And what's interesting, a little, PSA or a little, point of interest to your audience, you'll find, or I found, every time I do something or make a decision that's in my best and highest good, something will show up. I call it the how bad do you want it? Something will show up to test that resolve. So after I decided to just do the year and be done, somebody that I had worked with before, who was now a head of school out in California, came to visit the school, offered me a job to do exactly what I was doing where I was, would pay for the move, would pay for all the stuff for me to get settled, paying me almost double what I was making. Yeah. And I was like, nope. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm going to be an artist. You remember my name?
Okay. And what was his reaction?
Because it was tentative. He was like, this is what we're going to do. I just started that job. It'll probably be in a year. So it was one of those things that I just kind of appeased him and was like, sure, we'll talk about it when the time comes. But my inner circle, people that I worked with who knew that he offered me this opportunity, couldn't believe it. I'm like, you guys don't understand they say when you meet a significant other, they're like, oh yeah, you just know when you know. And when I was meeting so many insignificant others, I was like, what do you mean? How do you know? If you don't know, you don't know, right? But when that happens to you, when your soul speaks to you and says, you don't even realize it's your purpose, but says you have to do this because you can't not do this, then you would understand how I could easily turn that down, for sure.
Oh, I totally understand myself. And I'm sure a lot of the audience, whoever is listening to this right now, is just nodding their heads going, yep, I know. And I'm thinking that a lot of them maybe have done the same thing over time. I think we get to a certain age or a certain point in our lives where it's like, I'm tapping out. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And, basically I walked away from my private physical therapy practice in 2017. It was like I was a respiratory therapist for almost 20 years, 17. And then I was a PT for 20 years, and 40 years of taking care of people. It just all of a sudden just accumulated. I'm like, you know what? It's time to take care of me. I'm tapping out.
Yeah. And you have to. And what I notice is people talk about midlife crises, right? You know what I mean? The man has the affair, buys a sports car, the woman, whatever, she's hanging up with the pool boy, whatever it is, we have our midlife crises. But really, it's an opportunity to look at ourselves. And when we, again, hear that voice and we do what's right for us and we pursue that, our trajectory looks like this. And for those of us who ignore the voice, and usually it's fear, I can't do this, whatever the conditioning is, I can't do this, and this is why. And usually you start to become a caricature of yourself, of that fear. Like I watched my mother was so beautiful physically, so beautiful, and she was charming and charismatic, and she never overcame whatever her traumas were. And I watched her as she aged. She's since deceased, but as she aged, just become this angry, bitter.
Oh.
Yeah, and nothing beautiful about her on the inside, because she became a caricature of her worst fears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate. So again, if you're getting that nudge,
Mm-hmm.
it can only be right. It can only be right.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to something you said when you were talking about the death to self.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so poignant and really struck a chord with me, because basically that is really going to impact your physical health and your mental health, which you just kind of illustrated talking about your mom. If you're not following your heart and following your dreams, you're killing a part of yourself deep inside, and your cellular physiology responds to it.
So much. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I'm not as familiar with the science. I even wrote a couple things in one of my books about how I buy into that and how I live by that. And first to say, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
doctor. I know that there's science behind all of it, but I know that we are all comprised of energy. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? And when your energy isn't free flowing, wherever it's stagnant, is where you
Mm-hmm.
start to develop maladies if it's ignored. And we live in a society that we self-soothing, everything except for looking at ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
An impulse buy. Oh, let me take a selfie. Oh, let me eat that cookie. Oh, let me drink that beer. Like, we live in this society of soothing outwards. And what we don't realize is we're ignoring the signals, I call it
Mm-hmm.
our physical and our emotional guidance system. We're
Mm-hmm.
ignoring those things that are alerting us to
Mm-hmm.
joy, peace, freedom, and all the things to make beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
magical lives for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And that realization came to me, I don't want to say late in life, but of course, middle-aged type of time of life. And that was really hard for me to like embrace and understand, because I was raised in that Western medicine mindset. I mean, and
Yeah.
it was so beaten into me, like I said, 40 years of working in healthcare. But it was toward, the middle of my PT career that I started finding some alternative methods, mostly for my own benefit to help me. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole new world out there. And the amount of body wisdom that we have, once we become aware of it and respond to it, we can lead much healthier, happier lives, drug-free, medication-free. You can still do that, maybe retail therapy every now and again, but you have control of
Yeah.
your life.
Yep. Yep. I don't know if you picked up any of this when you were, you know, doing your homework on me, but I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in
Yes.
2015. And I don't take any medication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take any, and they told my grandfather, he was in a wheelchair until he died. He had RA. I've heard stories, people, I'm an artist. People can't use their fingers, and my kids were young when I was diagnosed, and I was like, I can't even get on the floor and play with them anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
through my understanding of
Mm-hmm.
how our emotional, mental health, how
Mm-hmm.
that is a component, stress, really
Mm-hmm.
dump the stress, whatever that looks
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and even now, even though I'm free of symptoms, when I push myself too hard, because even good stress is stress.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love my job and I work a lot, but it's still stress, and
Mm-hmm.
my body will start to tell me. So we just have to learn to listen to those
Mm-hmm.
signals.
Yep, that self-awareness and that internal awareness and the messages that your body is telling you, because your body is talking to you all the time. We're just so good at not paying
Ignoring
attention.
it.
And like you said, looking outside yourself and going for something else. But yeah, it's truly phenomenal. And I've talked to so many people on the show who have stories like yours. They're diagnosed with chronic this, chronic that. I was a chronic pain patient when I was in my mid-30s, and that's what kind of like catapulted me into this journey of self-healing and
Mm-hmm.
discovery, and going, there's got to be another way of looking at the human body than what we're
Yep.
doing right now, because obviously it's not getting me anywhere. It's just really amazing. And once you can open your mind and just explore different things, and I just have to tell you a really quick story that the first time I ever I was so desperate. I mean, I was a chronic pain patient. I'd been living that life for 2.5 years. I was only in my mid-30s. And I was told, okay, this is it. This is the life you're going to have for the rest of, eternity. You're never going to get any better, but we'll just keep plying you with medications. We'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. And I just didn't like that. So I decided I was going to do something absolutely radical. So I went to see an acupuncturist, and I was so shocked at myself that I was actually going to do something that was alternative medicine, something like acupuncture. I wanted to wear like a disguise, a raincoat, hat, fake nose and glasses and mustache to get it, because I thought, what if somebody sees me?
Yeah.
But that was 30 years ago. So, things just weren't as mainstream or as accepted, the alternative.
Yes.
But alternative healthcare and just really listening to yourself and understanding what you need and when is a hugely empowering piece of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you begin to listen to all of the GPS, all of the things that we have been born with to help us identify what's going on with us. Listen to your emotions, listen to your body signals, listen to how you feel in situations. And when you begin to listen to that, you realize that you have a lot more control over your destiny, over your physical health, over everything than you think you do. And once you come to accept that you're in charge, and that goes for the good, the bad, and the ugly, then it's up to you to shift that. And I've made that my life's work. The story is how I left education to become an artist, but really the artist is just a component of how I express myself. But everything I do is about assisting people in understanding that the power is within them always.
So let's talk about that intuitive part of you, because, I think that's really important. And I think we all have some intuitive abilities, but there are people like yourself who are really gifted at it and take it to a higher level. So how do you work with people, with your intuitive gift?
Yes.
And there are so many people who are stuck, and especially this, we're going through a really weird time of in the world. I mean, it's really crazy.
Really?
I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
Turn on the TV, check it out.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I come home from my activities or whatever, and my husband will be watching the news, and I'm like, we invade any countries lately,
Yeah, right.
what exploded, tell me what it is, because I don't really want to listen. So, and how is all of that negative information that we are almost like we're being force fed?
Yes.
Impacting our mental health, our physical health, our own creativity, artistic abilities, whatever gifts that we do have? I know that's a really loaded question.
Yeah. I'm in my head. I'm trying to organize and categorize how to go about this, but I got a lot to say. You may have to, pull hit the gong on me or something.
No, I don't worry about that. I don't have anything to do all day. Later this afternoon, I'm going to the dojo and work out, but I got all day.
All right. So I'm going to start at the most basic level on how I see it. Every single emotion that we have is based in just one of two camps, love or fear. Okay. People think it's love and hate, but it's love and fear. And all fear is the absence of love. The other piece is love is not what we think, hearts and flowers and romance. Love is really freedom of fear. So and you'll see where I'm going, but when you see any emotion, even like irritation, right? If you look at it, there's a spectrum: fear, love. Irritation falls around here. It's a form of fear. If you really, really trace it back, frustration, hate, anger, fear, any of those things, love, joy, peace, freedom, contentment, right? Those are all love. So the society that we live in, whether it's in the collective or individually, we have been conditioned to be fearful. Every ad you see on TV for every product, any product, it's preying on your fear. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I could go on and on, right? So we are conditioned implicitly and explicitly. So implicitly, like we just live in fear. We're around people who have fear, right? Explicitly is be scared. This country is attacking us. Be scared. You're going to get, such and such virus. Be scared if you take the shot. Be scared if you don't take the shot. Like there's all of these things. Be scared, be scared, be scared. It's the only way that we can be controlled by anybody other than us. So for that, I don't watch the news. So I just want to table that thought process for a second and go to your initial question about the intuition, the intuitive nature. We are all born with our own guidance system, our own sense of intuition. We all think about how you learned in school, right? You either learn kinesthetically, you have to touch stuff, like experientially, auditorily, right? Somebody reads something to me, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I'm a visual learner. Right? Then you have the visual people. So that's just one example. Then you have empaths. You have people who really get and feel and get caught up in other people's emotions. Then you have like the sentient, the feelers. Like I know I could walk into a room and I could feel the energy, like the hair will stand up in my arms. So we all have a little bit of that, and we had it even more so as children. You have the clairvoyants, the ones who see, the clairaudience, the ones that hear, the clairsentience, the ones I could go through that whole thing. But as children, we become conditioned with fear. It's not coming from an evil place. It's just coming from people who carry fear are teaching you fear. Your parents had fear because their parents had fear because their parents had fear, right? But as we grow up and we start to notice our own imbalances, what drives us, that has to do with the awareness you were talking about, right? So there's two components. You have to have awareness and you have to have willingness. It's not enough to be aware. You have to be willing to do something about it. And then there's those poor saps who are willing to do anything, but they don't know what the hell that they're aware of, right? So you have these kids. They'll have these innate abilities, these innate sensitivities. Everybody needs to go back and think, I wanted to be an artist when I was little. And of course, fear, put that aside. How will you support yourself? How you do this and that and the other? You need to do something more practical. So the intuitive nature kind of gets squeezed out of us through fear. But then we get to an age, that age we're talking about, if it doesn't come sooner, well, we're like, screw you, forget that. I want to do what I want to do. And we start telling fear where to go and eliminating it, and then going back and reconcile certain beliefs and certain behavioral patterns that we may have picked up along the way that were based in fear. We have to do that by looking at it, by maybe becoming estranged from toxic relationships, maybe moving across the country to sever a tie, right? We may have to do all those things. And then we start to understand our own self-worth, and we start to understand that we matter, and we start to pursue things that make us feel good. And then the intuition opens. I was always intuitive, just as you're intuitive, just as anybody else is listening is intuitive. But my intuition blew up when I opened up to my artistic nature, when I let go of the fear and left a scary job, when I cut the toxic ties with my maternal family, when I forgave my father after having been estranged for 2 decades. And then I met my husband, who was a supportive, wonderful, beautiful person. I had children, learned unconditional love for the first time. And then my intuition opened up even more. And then I painted and met really cool people. And then my intuition opened up even more. And that's how it happens. That was a lot. But that's really it in a nutshell, a very large nutshell, but a nutshell nonetheless.
It's a very large nutshell, but in that shell, there were those little nuggets that were just absolutely so valuable. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
You gave me the green light to go off. So
I did. And it was wonderful. I didn't even have to, what did you call it? Pull the cord, or what was it that you said to?
Oh, I don't even know, but I was like, I had the vision of like a hook.
That's what I was thinking, the hook on the old fashioned theater thing.
Yeah.
So what I really want to know about is what does Ubuntu stand for? How did you choose that as a name for your gallery? And when did you decide, okay, since you're so good at pulling pulling the trigger and going to, you know, the
Right.
next phase. When did
Yeah.
you decide that, hey, it's time to open up my own gallery? Because to me, I would think that that would be that is a huge commitment. It's a huge step, and
Yeah.
things might go wrong, but
Yeah.
obviously you had the courage, you didn't have the fear, you had the love in your heart that it was going to work out.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I opened the gallery in the fall of 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. And the weekend we opened, there was a hurricane in Florida. It was coming like right for Stuart. All of it, all of it. And you know, I just want to address fear for a second. You know, I am not fearless. I'm
Mhm.
courageous, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, the fear does seep in, but I have to have the ability to have the faith in myself. And the more you do, the easier it gets, and push
Mhm.
the fear aside. But I am not like willy-nilly fearless. But to tell you
Mhm.
about Ubuntu is such a beautiful story. When my children were really small, right before I started painting, I'm sure there are people listening that have heard this story, but I stumbled across this story of this anthropologist who was studying a tribe in Africa. And when he was waiting for his transportation to get him back to the States, he was with all the kids from the village. And he said to them, oh, here's what we're going to do. Let's play a little game while we wait for my transportation. He's like, I have this candy I bought in the city. Why don't you guys line up? I'm going to place the candy by the tree. And I want you on the count of 3 to race to the tree. And whoever gets there first gets the candy. So all the kids are like, yay. And they all line up, right? And he's like, 1, 2, 3. And on 3, all the kids, they linked arms and they ran to the tree together. And he was dumbfounded, you know, an American, right? And he goes over to the tree, and all the kids are eating, they're all excited. And he goes up to one of the girls and he says, why would you do this? Like, why would you share? And she looks at him and she says, Ubuntu, I am because we are. How can I be happy and enjoy it? Right? Right. I never tell the story where I'm not all chills. How could I not be happy if everybody else isn't happy? And it hit me so hard. I had these 2 little girls, and I wanted to break all my toxic cycles of growing up. And so everything became Ubuntu in my house, right? Like they were so cute, my kids. They didn't even know that it wasn't like a part of the general vernacular. Like if one wasn't sharing, the other one would be like, no, it's not Ubuntuing. Like it became just our
Mhm.
way of being. Everything I did was under this philosophy. So when I started painting, it became Ubuntu art by Dana. When I opened the
Mhm.
gallery, it had to be Ubuntu. So everything is about that general message.
So I'm guessing that the Ubuntu Fish Gallery, where'd the fish come from? Is that just because you're in Florida?
No, no. When I had it, so when I was painting in the woods, right? So just to give you the time, when I was painting in the woods, and I was opening up and returning to nature and returning to myself, and my intuitive nature was just blowing up the more I said yes to me, right?
Mhm.
um I was meeting a lot of people that were of the spiritual nature, and I was
Mhm.
realizing that intuition and spirituality really grow in tandem with creativity. And so
Mhm.
I'm meeting artists and all sorts of stuff. So I met this woman, super, super cool. We hit it off right off the bat. Anne Marie Scordy, shout out. And she was a heavy intuitive. She's a trance channel, super, super intuitive. I was more the artist, although she was an artist as well. And I was an intuitive as well. And we would meet in my studio and we would do like, you know, intuitive stuff. And I had this idea one day, and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we opened up a gallery, like a space for intuitives and artists, so we could all grow together and we could assist? And she said to me, well, duh. It had been her idea for a long time. I didn't know.
Mhm.
She goes, yeah, I was going to call that the Moon Fish Gallery. So I was like, oh, I would have called it the Ubuntu Room. So it became the Ubuntu Fish Gallery, and here we are. It makes no sense, but it begs the question, why the hell would you call it that? So
Exactly. It makes no sense when you just look at it, but when you tell the
yeah,
story, it makes
yeah.
perfect sense. You couldn't call it anything else. I mean, what
Yeah,
else? Nothing else would work like that. So,
exactly.
okay. And then when did you decide to become an author? I'm guessing that you didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to write some books. Or did it happen that way? I mean, yeah, nothing surprises me
At this
right now.
point, right, right. So I'm in the gallery. The gallery is not just about art, it's about intuition. I do intuitive guidance. I've managed to merge all of my my educational experience, my intuition, my artistic, and I do this intuitive guidance with people in the gallery to help them, again, understand their own personal power. So, when you work with people, you have the same anecdote, the same analogy, you're telling the same stories all the time. So in the spring of 2021, my husband, both my children and myself, we all came down with COVID. We dropped like flies, like dominoes, boom, 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 boom. The four of us are in bed. And I have not been still long enough because I'm so driven to be successful, to the pigs fly, that whole nine. And so I'm in bed. And when I was after the part where you think you're going to die, like, and everything hurts and, whatever, I'm laying there. And all of the stuff that I share in my guidance sessions was like plopping into my head, but with profundity, like in these little, like these just beautiful ways. So I was like, oh, let me put my notes in my phone because I can't move, right? So I'm putting my notes in my phone. And then when I started to feel better, I noticed, I'm like, let me organize these. I got on the computer and I organized them, and I noticed there was 10 of them. And I'm like, oh, there'll probably be like a lecture series at some point at the gallery. I'll do a workshop on it. I'm like, let me just write up a little bit about each. Next thing I know, I'm like, holy crap, I think I'm writing a book. And it wrote itself. I wrote it in like a month, and it's called the 10. It took a year to get it to press and all that, because, you have to the edit and the marketing and the this and the that and the publisher or whatever. But I wrote it in a month. I just puked it out. I'm so eloquent, but I just puked it because it was it kind of came through me as opposed to from me. Like, it was really, really powerful stuff. And it was just these 10 pearls of wisdom that I live by, and that I assist people with. And it's enmeshed with personal anecdotes, you know what I mean? Like my own personal stories that were connected to why I learned this and why I call this is truth in my world.
Oh yeah, people love stories. People love stories in books, and especially when you're telling and sharing life's lessons, because it really is makes you so relatable. But I love the way that you said you just puked it out. And I have a very good friend of mine. She actually started out just as my publishing consultant, but we got to be very, very good friends. And that's one of the things that she loves to say. She says, just barf it out all over the place.
Yeah.
And she'll say, there's two ways of writing a book. You can do the outline, you can be very meticulous, blah, 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 or you can just barf all over, the computer or whatever. And so I'm a little bit more of an outline person.
Oh yeah. No, I'm for sure. You can tell by my communication style. I'm a barfer. And I tell people too, because I've always, I used to help kids write college essays and stuff, because I used to be an SAT tutor, English teacher, all that stuff. And I would say, because people get stuck.
Yeah.
They get stuck. I'd be like, puke it out, give it to me, and I will help it take shape. And that's kind of what I did. I puked it out. And that's when I started to realize, oh, there's 10, and they go in this order, and all this story goes with this, and and I bear it. I bear it. Like, I don't tell stories that make me look pretty. Like, I tell stories that I'm like, yeah, that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I have some of those in my second book, and had a couple of really bad weeks once it did get published. I was like, oh my God, how do I get the genie back in the bottle? And people say, hey, I just got your book. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's only for people who don't know me, not for people who really do.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. As far as, so I'm working on my third book right now, and I was so stuck. And finally it was like, I don't think this is really going to happen. So I just put it away for a while, and I started knitting again. Because, I've been a knitter off and on for, as a matter of fact, I made this probably over 20 years ago. So I just picked up my needles again and started knitting. And all of a sudden it was like, voila, writing is knitting with words.
It's your creativity. When I can't write, I paint. When I can't paint, I write. When I can't write or paint, I cook or I garden. It's just tap into your creativity, and the world will open up to you.
Yep. Excellent.
Oh, that's fantastic.
One thing you didn't tell us when you were talking about writing the book was the title. And I absolutely freaking love the title. We talked about this before we started the recording. So share it with us, please.
So it's the 10 recommendments for personal empowerment. And when I'm asked why I say that, or why I called it that, it's because I'm like, no one's forcing you to do anything. Like, there's no commanding. I'm recommending it. And if you don't, then that's on you. But if you do, your life might suck a little bit less. It's really, really good stuff. And can I bring up the follow-up?
Of course.
Yeah. So its follow-up is called Beyond the 10, Decoding the Woo-Woo. Because the first the first book, 10 Recommendments, is really about how I became empowered and how people can, just assist people in empowering themselves. And once you empower yourself, and this goes to the point that I was making before about how we become conditioned and we carry all this stuff, this unnecessary stuff along with us. And when we learn to figure out what serves us and what doesn't, and let go of the things that no longer serve us, and you become empowered, and you start to become more intuitive and more connected, and life gets easier and you have more clarity, then the second part, Beyond the 10, is what your life looks like. It becomes almost magical. You become aligned with people that are on the same wavelength as you, and you start having these more wonderful experiences. And what I learned is when I started connecting with people who are more in the spiritual community, there's a language of the metaphysical, of the woo-woo community, that is a turnoff for just like normal people, like alignment and manifestation and there's so many, the chakras,
law of attraction,
yeah, like attracts like. And so there's all of these terms, about energy and vibration and frequency. And I would always be like, bleh, even when I have to use one of these words, like I'm always like, oh, now I'm going to punch myself. You know what I mean? I'm going to throw up in my mouth. But what I came to realize through my experience Beyond the 10 was there is value to all of these terms. There's just people not throwing them around, not using them correctly. And it gives a negative spin or a bad taste in your mouth. But I told the story, a same sort of thing as 10 Rex, is as I'm living it with the anecdotes and what these words really mean. I decoded this woo-woo, and then the journey of what I call it my unintentional spiritual journey looked like. I didn't quit my job to paint to become an intuitive in an intuitive lounge and use words like frequency and vibration. I just wanted to paint. I wanted to make some money painting. That's all I wanted. But such a beautiful world opened up to me, and I wanted to share with people that their worlds can be beautiful too, if they just, again, say yes to themselves.
Love it. And I love both of those titles. The Decoding the Woo-Woo, that just tickled me when I saw that. I was like, I got to talk to this woman real quick. But I really love the fact that the 10 recommendments, like you said, they're recommendations. Nothing turns people off more than somebody standing on a soapbox, the expert, and lecturing what you should and should not do. That turns me off, and I know that turns a lot of people off right away. So it's like, it's a recommendation. You don't, maybe 8 of these recommendations work for you, maybe only 2, but you get to kind of sample it. It's like a buffet platter.
Yeah. And the first, right before the prologue, I do a whole thing about, this is my story. This is just for you to hear my story and what works for me. But at the end of the day, it's your story.
Yeah.
It's, and it's for you to do, what you would do with that. And to your point about the gurus on the soapbox, that's what I find you see often in the spiritual community. People watch the gurus and they read the books and they watch the YouTube videos and they mimic or they parrot that stuff and they want to be the guru. So now they're going to go teach others. I'm just telling you that my life was a bit of a dumpster fire. I grew up in a dumpster fire. I continued the dumpster fire. I perfected the dumpster fire. And when I decided I did not want to live in that dumpster fire anymore, without intention, I didn't know how this worked. I started making decisions that were best for me. And when the tide started to turn, and then I started to understand the patterns and the formulas of what I was doing, I started to do it more intentionally. And then the beautiful life sped up. And so I'm just trying to tell people that this is what it looked like. And in your own way, it could look like that for you too. If you just have to commit to yourself.
So then do you coach people one-on-one?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And okay, then we have to get to the next. Vita finds her crown. And as a self-proclaimed princess, I just love I mean, I gave up the crown for the sword a couple of years ago, or, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how did Vita find her crown? What is that story about? I'm guessing it's a children's book.
It opened as a children's book, but it's not. It's like, when you go to a Disney movie with a kid,
Uh-huh.
and it's for them with the cartoons and the music, but the adults get all the jokes and the adults
Hmm.
get the message and the theme
Hmm.
and all. That's really what it is. So I wrote the book for pre-adolescent to like adolescent kids, so between
Hmm.
like 9 and like 12 or 13. But I do workshops, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but on finduniquelyu.com, based on all 3 of my books. And I teach Veda, and I'll tell you what it's about in a second, but I teach Veda to adolescents in a
Hmm.
workshop. I teach it to adults for adults, but I also have a component where I teach the adults who work with children how to apply it to their children. So if you're a parent, a caretaker, a teacher, a coach, or
Hmm.
anybody who works with children, you're not only learning how to reconcile your imbalances, because that's really what it's about,
Hmm.
but you then will be given tools and tips on how to apply it to the children in your life.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
kind of try to hit all angles with it.
Hmm. Okay, and so then you mentioned the finduniquelyu.com.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just for the listeners, and you can find us in the show notes, it's the words find uniquely and then a letter U
Yeah.
dot com.
Yeah. Like
So tell us
university.
about that.
So finduniquelyu.com. It's the parent company is called the Uniquely Phenom Collaboration. Okay.
Okay.
Phenom is our publishing company. Uniquely You is more of a community for people who want to create workshops.
Hmm.
What we do is, as the publishers, we help people publish their books, and but the type of books is kind of Hay Housey feel, like
Hmm.
like people who are into Hay House. It's like the self-help, the new age, and stuff like that. Um, when we publish their books, I then teach them how to take their content
Hmm.
and teach it in a workshop form on finduniquelyu.com.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So people is for all content creators. So if you were a blogger, if you were an author, any content you've created, we have a Ready Set Teach program where I can teach you how to create a workshop on the platform. But because we have the publishing company, that's like the gold star. Like if you
Hmm.
publish with us, and then so we have the Phenom, whatever, we have different tiers in
Hmm.
how you can go about doing this. So I have 4 books actually published. One of them is an art book, though. It's with all my artwork. It's called A Woman's Journey. It's absolutely beautiful. It's not on my website yet because it just came out like 3 days ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So beautiful. It's got 70 paintings of women, children, nudes, empowered women, spiritual. It's just breathtaking. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but the other 3 books, because they're to assist people in their empowerment,
Hmm.
all 3 of those books, I teach the
Hmm.
workshops on the platform, and Veda is one of them. And that's what I was saying. I teach to the different levels.
Okay, and now what about your curriculum plus content? Is that that's part of the
Yeah,
finduniquelyu.com?
yeah. So I'm weird about titles because it sounds a little
No, I
pretentious,
love your
but
titles because once you hear them, it's like, what's this about?
all right, good. Because I'm the chief officer of curriculum and content. So it just sounds a little, So when I got my job, when I got promoted to the director of student development at my old job, and my head of school asked what I wanted to be called, I'm like, call me the dean of awesomeness, because but it stuck. It was
Uh-huh.
awesome. All right, so back to this. So the director of curriculum and content, or the officer of curriculum and content, basically means any content that is on the platform, that is facilitated or taught on the platform.
Uh-huh.
I'm the one who's in charge of making sure that it's all appropriate, it's all in line with our vision and mission.
Right.
I work with the they're called U instructors. I work
Okay.
with the U instructors and assist them in creating that content. So that's my main role. Angela, who is my partner in crime, and she is the brain baby, or this is Uniquely You was the brain baby of her, I should say. she's all things creative. She's like a
Mhm.
website developer, and her background's in branding
Oh,
and
geez.
marketing. Yeah, no, we're a pretty good duo because
Yeah.
we complement each other in strengths, you know.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, your books sound absolutely amazing. And actually everything that you're doing sounds absolutely amazing. And one of my main questions I think is so important that I really want to ask you, is that, did you ever go back to that gentleman and say, hey, Nana, look at me. You were wrong.
Oh, that's so funny you say that, because I had moments where I was tempted to like invite him to a function,
Hmm.
you know what I mean, or tag him in something on social media. But then the clear version of me says it doesn't matter, none of it
Yeah, let
matters.
it go.
I
Hmm.
know. And so yeah, here I am. And again, there's a lot. A creator's always creating. So as much as I'm like, oh yeah, look, I've made it, I haven't. I'm just making things all the time, you know,
Right,
and just trying to live a life. Again, at the end of the day, what do we want? We just
right.
want
Well,
peace.
we're all works in progress. You never really
Yes,
get to the top or to the pinnacle because you're constantly
exactly.
achieving and learning and growing. And that's what life is all about. It's when you stop that you might as well just curl up and
Yeah.
say, sayonara, we're done.
Yeah, and that's when the levels of fear in us are, it gives them a breeding ground to come
Yes.
back out and create havoc.
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it. So Dana, why don't you tell us where people can find you, how they can get to your website, your books, et cetera, et cetera.
Firstly, before I say that, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate. It's so, there's something about just talking about yourself and what you do, you know, it's a little uncomfortable, but you're so warm and so engaging and inviting, and I
Oh.
appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Um
Well, you're really easy to engage with. I will say that.
I got a lot to say, but I did, but I appreciate it. But so I'm gonna make it easy, because you could, if you wanted to buy the books, you can go to the Phenom. It's Phenom-Publishing. The hyphen sets us apart from other stuff. But Phenom-Publishing, you can learn more about me as an author. You could get the books. That's easy enough. If you wanted to take a workshop, one of my workshops, or somebody or another person's workshops, we have these amazing, it's all about, again, self-empowerment. You can go to find uniquely, again, youastheletter.com. But the easiest way to find me is ubuntufishgallery.com, ubuntu, because everything about what I'm doing, whether I'm doing it in the gallery or the art or the books or the workshops or whatever the hell it is this week, because next week it may be something different, but it's all on the website and it will take you where you need to go.
Mhm.
So, and it's beautiful. Angela DeMarco. Oh my God, yeah, I was gonna say my sister from another mister, and then I realized how dumb that sounded, but then I said it anyway. I don't know why that just happened,
Oh, I don't
but
think it sounds silly. I like
uh,
that.
she is we were sorority sisters 30 years ago, lost, reconnected, and we're creating these businesses together. She's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's amazing. She reinvented my website for me.
Mhm.
It's like brand spanking new, like just the other day it went live. So I'm actually asking you, go look at my website, ubuntufishgallery.com, just to see how pretty it is, and just to
Mhm.
give Angela her props, because she killed it. It's beautiful.
Mhm. Yes, she did. It is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Dana, what would be like one final pearl of wisdom that you want to share with the audience? I mean, you've given us so much to think about. Great story. Love the story about the Ubuntu and how you got the name, but I loved all of your stories. But what would be like the one pearl of wisdom that you would like to leave the audience with that they could kind of think about and sit with and that could help change their lives? No pressure, right?
Well, I got my Rolodex, right? You know, my default is always, you know, tell fear to F off, but it's not always that easy.
Hmm.
So really it's the power is really within us, always. We just have to know that. We have to know our worthiness. And when we recognize our worthiness and our own, and become empowered because of that, it becomes easier to tell fear to F off. Forgive me, dirty girl. It becomes easier to tell fear where to go. It becomes easier to say yes to the things that feel good to be. All of it becomes easier, but you have to know that you have the power to do that.
I absolutely love it when the Italian Jersey girl pops out.
Yeah.
Dana, thank you so much for being here. It has been a great conversation. I have just absolutely loved having you on the show. You're just amazing. And I'm really excited to keep an eye on you. I'm going to be stalking you to see what you're doing, because you're creating so many wonderful programs and so many great things. So.
Oh, Cheryl, thank you. You're awesome. You're awesome. We're friends now. You know that, right?
Oh, I knew. Well, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Jersey meets Western Pennsylvania. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. Please tell your friends and family about this podcast. Please like the episode. Give us a 5-star review. I would love you forever, but let's face it, I'm going to love you forever anyway. And do go to Dana's website. It is absolutely stunning. I've been on it. And as a matter of fact, I'm going back because I want to see about those pigs flying. Yeah. And just keep in mind, or just remember to pay attention to yourself, to that inner voice, and cut out some of the negativity. We don't need to hear some of that stuff. It's just noise. And tell fear to do something to itself that is anatomically impossible. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.